Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something that might seem, well, a bit specific at first glance, the global steam boiler system market. But honestly, it's fascinating. It's not just industrial gear. It gives you this surprising look into global economic health, into development trends. We're working from a really comprehensive market forecast report here from Cognitive Market Research. It goes all the way out to 2033. And our mission really is to kind of pull out the key insights, find the surprising bits in the data, figure out what's actually driving this market, and maybe what that tells us about bigger economic shifts globally. You hear steam boilers, and maybe you don't immediately think, multi-billion-dollar market growing steadily. But it is.
It absolutely is. And that's why this is worth diving into.
Yeah.
It's easy to kind of overlook these systems, right? But they are so foundational. Think about it. Power generation, heavy industry, chemical plants, even just large-scale heating. They all rely on this. They're sort of the unsung heroes. So when we look at the numbers for this sector, growth or decline, it's not just some niche thing. It's like a direct signal of what's happening underneath: industrial activity, infrastructure investment, globally. These numbers really give us a peek into the world's economic engine at a really basic level.
That sets it up perfectly. So let's start with that big picture, the global view. The report shows it's a really significant market. Back in 2021, revenue was over $15.3 billion.
$15.3 billion.
And then fast forward just a few years to 2025, it's projected to climb near $17.7 billion.
Okay.
But the longer view, out to 2033, that's where you see it estimated to hit almost $23.5 billion.
Wow, okay.
So, yeah, it's not just a blip. It shows this really consistent growth. The compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, is 3.6% across that whole period.
And what's really striking about that steady 3.6% globally, it's what it implies for, long-term stability. For such a fundamental industry, that kind of steady growth suggests global industrial activity isn't just like jumping around. It's expected to keep up a pretty robust, healthy expansion over the next decade. It points to sustained investment, infrastructure, manufacturing worldwide. A broad base of development, not just short-term spikes.
That broad base, though, it starts to show some really interesting regional differences when you dig in. Let's zoom into North America first. Still a huge player, obviously. The market there was nearly $6.5 billion in 2021.
Right.
Projected to grow over $9.6 billion by 2033. That's a CAGR of about 3.39%.
Okay, slightly under the global average then.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting within North America, the internal breakdown. The U.S. is the biggest chunk, no surprise. Around $5.25 billion in 2021, heading towards $7.56 billion. But its CAGR is just over 3.1%. Now, compare that to Canada and Mexico. Both started smaller, but they're growing faster. Canada's CAGR is projected at nearly 4.35%.
Oh, quite a bit higher.
Yeah, and Mexico leads the region, almost 4.42% CAGR.
That immediately makes you wonder, doesn't it? Why are Canada and Mexico outpacing the U.S. in this specific foundational sector? It suggests maybe a difference in their industrial development stage or focus right now. Like perhaps Mexico and Canada are seeing more active build-out, new industrial parks, big energy projects needing whole new systems.
Right, new installations.
Exactly. Whereas the U.S., being a more mature market, might be focusing more on, upgrades, replacements, making existing stuff more efficient.
Yep.
Which is important, absolutely, but it doesn't drive that same level of raw growth in new boiler sales. It's about where the investment is focused.
That's a really key distinction. Okay, let's pivot to Europe now. Generally, the story here is slower growth, but still pretty steady. European revenue was just under $4 billion in 2021.
All right.
Forecasted to get over $5.8 billion by 2033. That's a CAGR of 3.24%. So yeah, a bit slower still.
Right.
Germany is the biggest contributor in Europe, growing at 3.67%. So actually above the European average. The UK also shows solid growth, 3.865%. Pretty strong.
Interesting.
But then you see countries like France, Italy, Russia, Spain.
Yeah.
Their growth rates are more moderate, mostly below 3%. And then some others, like Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, they're going even slower, under 2%.
But if you connect that back to the bigger picture, the really intriguing part in Europe, for me anyway, is that rest of Europe category. It shows a remarkably high CGR, over 6.15%.
Whoa, yeah, that is high compared to the others there.
Exactly. It suggests that while those big established Western European economies are seeing, steady but maybe incremental growth, there are these specific pockets, maybe less talked about, where there's some really intense industrial activity or expansion happening elsewhere on the continent.
So maybe new manufacturing hubs popping up
Mm.
or shifts in supply chain.
Could be. Or big infrastructure projects in, say, newer EU members or other Eastern European countries.
Yeah.
Something's driving significant new demand there, contrasting with the more mature markets.
Okay, from Europe, let's move to what seems like the powerhouse of expansion for this market.
Mm.
Asia Pacific. I mean, this region just shows consistently substantial growth. Higher overall rate than Europe or North America.
Remember?
Just over $3 billion in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Projected to soar past $5 billion by 2033. That's a strong CAGR of 4.078%.
Right. Definitely leading the pack so far.
And as you'd probably guess, China dominates in sheer size, growing at 4.35% CAGR. India also looks impressive, nearly 4.88% CAGR.
Very strong.
But the one that really jumped out at me was Taiwan. Highest regional CAGR there.
Right.
An incredible 5.622%,
Wow, 5.6%. That's specific and high.
isn't it? And beyond those, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Southeast Asia generally,
Mm.
all contributing solid growth. And guess what? That rest of Asia Pacific category, again, leads the charge. Strongest overall CAGR in the region at 6.8%.
What's so fascinating there is just the sheer diversity of economies in Asia Pacific that are all adding up to this really robust growth picture. You've got the massive scale of China and India's industrialization, right?
Yeah.
But then you also have this super targeted, intense development happening in places like Taiwan. I mean, that high CAGR in Taiwan,
Hmm.
it suggests really focused industrial expansion, maybe specific high-tech manufacturing, things that need a lot of process heat.
Makes sense.
It just tells you so much about the different speeds, the different types of industrialization and infrastructure development happening across the region, and the energy demand that goes with it. It really feels like the global engine for this sector right now.
Definitely the region to watch. Okay, let's round things out with the remaining regions. Each has its own kind of compelling story, too. South America first. Market there projected to grow from around 783 million in 21 to over 1.1 billion by 2033. CAGR is 3.066%. So a bit slower, closer to the mature markets.
Okay.
Brazil's leading the way there, but Argentina, Colombia also showing decent growth. Then the Middle East, showing pretty strong growth, actually, moving from nearly 700 million up to over 1.1 billion. The CAGR there is 4.164%.
Oh, quite strong then, yeah.
Yeah, and within that, the UAE is even higher, over 4.8%. And again, that rest of the Middle East category, particularly strong at 5.41% CAGR.
Another rest of story. Interesting pattern.
It really is.
Yeah.
But here's a segment that I have to say really grabbed my attention. Africa. This is projected to be the fastest growing region overall for steam boilers.
The fastest. Wow.
Yeah. Now, it's starting from a smaller base, right? Around 353 million in 2021. But it's set to basically double to almost 700 million by 2033. That gives it an incredible CAGR of 6.5884%.
6.58%. That's huge.
Huge. And the main drivers seem to be Nigeria, impressive 7.165%, CGR, and South Africa. South Africa actually has the strongest individual country CAGR globally in this report, 7.319%.
7.3%. Okay.
But, and this is a really important but, there's a massive contrast within the continent. That rest of Africa category
Right.
only shows a 1.641% CAGR. Very low.
Huh. So extremely uneven growth then.
Yeah, that immediately raises a big question, doesn't it? What explains that huge difference within Africa itself? I mean, the super fast growth in Nigeria and South Africa,
Yeah.
those really high CAGRs, it suggests very concentrated, probably large-scale industrial projects, right?
New investments maybe?
Yeah.
Resource extraction, energy infrastructure?
Yeah, or developing specific manufacturing zones, something big. But the much, much lower growth in the rest of Africa suggests this isn't like broad continental growth yet. It's really focused on these key hotspots. It signals targeted foundational investment in specific places rather than, say, widespread industrialization across the whole continent right now. So, okay, let's try and distill this deep dive down. We're seeing consistent global growth overall in the steam boiler market. That seems clear. But the expansion is particularly strong, really vigorous in Africa, albeit concentrated Asia-Pacific and parts of the Middle East, seems driven by that new foundational industrial development.
Right.
Meanwhile, Europe and North America, they're maintaining steady progress, but generally slower, maybe more focused on modernization or specific emerging areas within them.
Exactly. And I think it's so important to look past just the headline numbers, to really try and understand the economic shifts, the industrial changes these figures actually represent. For you, the listener, when you're watching global development, These kinds of stats, they're like a granular, tangible look at the real basics, the foundational bits of industrialization, of energy demand that are shaping things. They're giving you real-time signals about where the next wave of economic activity is really truly building up.
It really does make you think, doesn't it? When you see that rapid growth in places like South Africa, Nigeria, Taiwan, those rest of Asia Pacific numbers, what does that really suggest about where the global economy is literally, physically building its future? What can the demand for something seemingly as basic as a steam boiler tell us about the absolute fundamentals of a developing economy, where that energy and, crucially, that investment is flowing right now? Something to ponder. And a huge thank you again to Cognitive Market Research for the report that let us take this deep dive today.